Podcast. We are sitting in the Department of Public Safety's great production studio this morning with our host, our Deputy Directors, Eric Wacaster and Jason Lawrence, the one and only. Refuses to do leg workouts. We'll talk about that later.
Later in the podcast.
And myself, Chris Chapmond, I'm the Director for Law Enforcement Standards and Training. So a special shout out to Governor Sanders for putting us in these positions to be able to do what we're doing today, and our Attorney General, Tim Griffin, for giving us the money to actually put this studio together and build it out to a level that allows us to do this. So we're excited about today. So in today's segment, we're going to try to cover three topics that are very important to the direction we're going and some of the things we want to bring to our sheriffs and chiefs and law enforcement professions across the state. We're going to talk about update in decertification processes. I know that doesn't sound thrilling, but it's hugely important, and we do want to talk about that today, and Eric's just going to amaze us with his facts and figures and lead us down that road. And then we're going to talk about our advanced training section, which we've built out. That's been on our whiteboard since day one, is how do we build out and take to our law enforcement partners across the state advanced training that reduces their cost and time and effort. How do we do that? That's what we're designed to do. And then some new awards that we've been able to create to honor our men and women across the state for the work they've been doing. So let's just jump right into it. Eric, again, that topic we all been looking forward to. We've had some changes in decertifications, and that really affects our chiefs and sheriffs. So why don't you kind of update us on that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just a quick kind of overview of decertifications is probably warranted before we start talking about the changes. You know, we might have people that are listening that aren't familiar with that environment. So officers in Arkansas, unless they're elected, they get their law enforcement power through their certification. Our commission, they are the certification holders. They set the standards for an officer to become certified, to maintain their certification, and they also set the route by which an officer can lose their certification. That's the decertification process. There's 9 different grounds under which an officer can be decertified. And talking about the process, the first step in that process is the agency notifies us of the officer's offense or offenses or whatever it is. And generally that's tied to a separation. They were fired, maybe they resigned while they were under investigation. But it comes on the heels of that separation. We compile all that information, our office does, and we present it to the commission, who then who then reviews it and decides if there's a reasonable basis to proceed to a decertification hearing. That's the first step. From here moving forward, if the commission finds a reasonable basis to proceed to a decertification hearing, it will be set for a hearing. There will be a hearing date in the future. The officer will be notified of that hearing date. We'll prep our witnesses. We'll prep our case. There will be a hearing. That will happen. The officer will be noticed. They can show up. They can contest the decertification process, or if they don't show up, the hearings are going to be held in their absence. So moving forward, if the commission finds a reasonable basis to proceed to decertification, there will be a hearing.
And that's different because in the past, probably 3/4 of those decertifications never went to a hearing.
Yes, officers would choose not to request a hearing. That's not a process anymore. That's right. It is going to be a lot more work on our staff. It's going to be a lot more work on our commission. But I will say that I've got nothing but the highest faith in our legal staff and the support staff. They've already got a plan moving forward on how we're going to accomplish the workload. We're not going to go back to the backlog that we inherited when we came on board. That's not going to happen. We'll push through, and we'll do the work that needs to be done, and we'll handle business.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. So if our listeners don't realize this, we had a 4-year backlog on decertifications when we stepped into these positions, and through a lot of diligent work, creating new processes and procedures, we're right at 9 months to a year, right? I know this last commission meeting we were in that 10 to 12 month range on most of those hearings. So will this affect that?
Not in my opinion. I firmly believe our staff can make it happen. It's going to make for some long commission meetings. It's going to make for a lot more work, but it's important to get those hearings done in a timely manner for the agencies, for the officers, for law enforcement as a whole. There doesn't need to be that. Now, there will always be some type of outlier that may have some circumstances beyond our control that might kick it down the line for a while. But the vast majority of our hearings, where we've got it down into that 9, 10, 12-month period, we're going to keep it there. It's going to happen.
Well, I love the fact that our chiefs and sheriffs, we've had this conversation several times in different meetings. They're really proud of the work your staff is doing. They feel that if they bring a decertification forward, it's taken seriously. The work's put in to put together a great case, and then the presentation to the commission. And those are trials, basically. I mean, correct, right? Same style setting, call witnesses, prep witnesses, present evidence. And the chiefs and sheriffs that I've talked to as recently as this past week have been really impressed with that. So even though we're going to have a heavier burden on our legal staff and honestly on the chiefs and sheriffs and their staff, I don't anticipate the decertification is going down because the state of Arkansas is doing a good job of keeping the profession clean, and that's one of the ways to do it.
I agree 100%. Staff, a bunch of rock stars. What they do, I can't brag on them enough. The quality of the work that they're preparing for these decertification hearings, I don't expect it to go down at all. Quantity is going to go up, right? Quantity of hearings, but not quality hearings. Quantity is going up, quality is not going down.
Yeah. And so 2 questions just for clarification for everybody that's listening. Who can request a decertification? And then if they dismiss an officer or a deputy, they terminate them, and they don't request the decert. Talk about some of the processes that are in place now to inform other agencies of what that officer did or make them aware of the situation.
So there are multiple parties that can request the decertification. Generally, what we see is it's the agency the agency the officer worked for is generally who does the request. There are other options. Sometimes these decertifications come on the heels of a criminal investigation. The investigating agency, we've seen them request as well. We also have the ability within our office, within our division, to request. You actually, as a director, can request. So generally, the requests are coming from the agency the officer works for, the agency that investigated the officer, or we're moving forward, we have the ability to request in-house as well. Talking about the flagging system that you mentioned
absolutely.
as well. So I mentioned earlier there's 9 decertifiable grounds. Sometimes an officer is separated under a decertifiable ground, but the agency doesn't necessarily think that it rises to the level of decertification. So just for instance, 1 decertifiable grounds is a violation of policy and procedures. You know, that runs a wide scale.
Yeah.
It was the policy violation they didn't keep their car clean, or was the policy violation they committed a criminal act, right? One obviously doesn't necessarily sound like a decertifiable offense, but one, likely would be. So sometimes these offenses don't necessarily rise to the level of decertification. Statutorily, a subsequent hiring agency, so if this officer leaves agency A and goes to work for agency B is required by statute to contact us to get the details on that separation. We decided to get proactive with it. We flagged those officers who are separated under one of those 9 decertifiable grounds, whether it goes through decertification or not. And then the next agency, when agency B sends us the paperwork to hire them or even makes an initial inquiry about the officer, that gets kicked to legal. So our administrative personnel that sees that inquiry kicks it to legal. Legal compiles the information, and it gets pushed to the next agency. We're just trying to be efficient with it and make sure these agencies can make the most informed hiring decision that they can.
And the agency can't hire that individual. Their process sort of stops with us until they receive that information.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. So, they won't be added to the roster.
Exactly.
Because that's another thing we do in the standards office is we're the massive database that keeps track of agencies, officers, their training. It's a massive amount of information that we carry. But that officer's not going to get placed on that agency's roster until they get that information. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, so that's great. And I've heard really good things from our sheriffs and chiefs about how that's working. I know that a couple have actually said that they were flagged. They had an applicant that was flagged. They got that information. It helped them make an informed decision in their hiring process. So, again, great job. And I told you it wouldn't be boring.
No.
I mean, it's just great.
And Eric, you have seen, from your career, you have seen it in the training division because you've been required to check that box. You've seen it as your time as the legal counsel, which you were previously before coming on as deputy director. So for chiefs, sheriffs, training division, so you mentioned the vast majority of those come from the agency itself. Could you maybe, explain like how they do the things? Like, would they check this box?
Yeah,
What
for sure.
information do they need to provide? How
For sure.
much? How little?
So if it is a everything comes through the portal, our Arcadis portal. So when an agency separates an officer, there's a mandatory field that they have to check is decertification requested. And if they check the box that says decertification requested, then that prompts them to another field where they upload that information. But as soon as that comes through our system that a decertification has been requested, that's getting shipped over to legal. I say shipped. They're in the same office as we are, right next door to the person who processes.
knock on the door.
Exactly, right. So it gets kicked to the legal side, and they're making those phone calls, those follow-ups, and chief, sheriff, we need this information so we can start getting the ball rolling, because we don't want to have that backlog created again.
Sure.
We want to get that information. We want to do this stuff in a timely manner. The best thing that we can ask for, the biggest thing we can ask for that would be probably most productive to us is whenever if our chiefs and sheriffs and our agencies can think of these decertifications just like a case file they're providing to the prosecutor.
Got it.
So I want to request decertification on this officer. I fired him. He resigned. Whatever. Think about the case file you present to the prosecutor, and think of something similar.
Full discovery.
Yeah, full. Yeah. That's what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we need. And the quicker they can get that to us, the better.
Fantastic.
Man, it absolutely amazes me, that standard size, the amount of data they deal with, and then on top of this, because I think that we use a phrase and have for years, every good cop despises a bad cop.
Oh, yeah.
And that is something that I think is paramount is our division is holding officers accountable now.
Yeah, well, I think it goes beyond that. Our chiefs and sheriffs and our agencies are holding people accountable better today than maybe in the past as well. Sure. And maybe that's in partnership and relationship with the work that's being done in the standards office.
Yeah.
They know they're putting in the work. We've got a very proactive commission that is all of our commission meetings have went to 2-day meetings. We're meeting 12 days out of the year now. That's a pretty big lift, but we're committed to holding the profession to the highest standard.
So the three of us, been wearing a gun and a badge for many, many years. And we recognize the sacrifice it takes in order to do the work. Sure. We know the sacrifice the officer is making. We know the sacrifice the officer's family is making. And it is disrespectful to that sacrifice to not hold a bad officer accountable and get him out of the profession.
Yep, I agree. All right, so Jason, I told you wouldn't take up 29 minutes.
Just amazing.
You took
That
up
was
17
and change.
Not bad. So I know it was a pipe dream for all of us. It's still on the whiteboard in the main office. An advanced training section with a catalog of classes that are designed to be taken to our agencies on the road. Yeah. They don't have to come to us. We're coming to them. Free training,
yes, sir.
Hopefully at the highest level. So talk to us about that.
I'm truly excited about this, and that has been the challenge from the governor is training police officers, and I think that's her mandate to you is go out and train. And so yes, start as a pipe dream on the whiteboard, that advanced section. So we were able to build out and have a supervisor in charge of that, working on a catalog, just a list of classes that what we can take on the road. A lot of our agencies don't have the funds available. They're not a large agency. So it is very difficult for them to say, okay, we're going to give you days off, which is going to put your shift short or your division short. Then we got to pay for you to get there. Then we got to pay for your hotel room. Then we got to pay for your food and then get you back. So that dream of taking it to the agency is here. And we have been pushing this information out. I know all three of us have been talking about it. So we actually have a catalog that has gone out now, 35 total classes. We've already had a request to add 2 more, which we are currently working on that curriculum. So it is actually under the direction right now of Scott Rawson, who is one of our supervisors. Scott comes with a lengthy history of law enforcement in Camden PD, worked for a period of time down in Camden as one of the training agents. At that point, was able to come up to the central office and work out of there. So of those 35 classes are classes that we previously had taught, but we've added a few more. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go through a few of them. You good with that?
Yeah, we're on the clock, man.
We're on the clock. Crisis intervention training. So the 40-hour CIT and the 16-hour we can take on the road. Officer wellness and officer resiliency, and we can talk for hours about that by itself.
Several podcasts on that.
Absolutely. Field training officer, instructor development, firearms instructor, CID-1, which is an intro to CID. It's a 40-hour class. So the ability at that point to take a brand new investigator, put them in a 40-hour plus immersible class where they work everything from you get the crime, photograph it, process, all those things. handgun skills, leadership level 1, 2, 3, and 4, crime scene photography, which is a 2-day class, handcuffing, one-on-one control, defensive tactics, duty to intervene, ethics, interview, interrogations, confessions, crime prevention, patrol tactics, officer survival below 100, use of force, reasonable suspicion, probable cause, refresher, First Amendment, ambush prevention, which is a brand new class we're pushing out. Extremely excited about that. The alert. So alert level 1, so the 2-day class, 16 hours. FRM, which is alerts medical. SWORD, which is a 2-day class, solo officer rapid deployment. AIR, so the integration between fire and EMS through alerts training. Milo, so we have a portable Milo system, can travel around the state with that. Advanced patrol rifle, advanced pistol, red dot pistol class, K9, stop the bleed. Department of Defense, so we control the LISO program, so we have the ability to come in for 8 hours, teach you how to use that system. SFST refresher, and ARIDE, Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement. 16-day course. So all of these now we will take on the road.
Yeah, so in the 2 classes that we are working on the curriculum for now is
background investigations
and
internal affairs.
And PIO, correct?
PIO.
Yeah, so actually 3.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
Yes.
those came from discussions with chiefs and sheriffs after we pushed this out. So the amazing thing to me is we all sat around that table knowing that this need existed. And so we pushed this out at the 1st of August.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it went out at the 1st of August. Since then, we've taught 29 classes across the state of Arkansas.
Correct.
Wow, that is a lift.
Oh, it is.
And it's pretty impressive. And then we've got classes scheduled out until January.
Oh, yes, sir.
And everywhere from Fayetteville to Jonesboro to McGee to Southwest Arkansas. So again, building the relationships with our sheriffs and chiefs regionally, so they will host us. And the only criteria is open the class up to other agencies. We're going to Poinsett County.
Yes, sir.
That was based off a conversation sitting in his office. What do you need, Sheriff? Well, here's the list of things I need. Next day, we've got classes scheduled in Poinsett County. So that's pretty impressive.
Well, I can't brag enough on chiefs and sheriffs as we've had those conversations going, give us that location. Give us a place we can teach and open it up. And they've all done it. So north, south, east, west, southwest, southeast, that northern corridor we have talked about. We're heading to Mountain Home. Matter of fact, next week. Batesville. I'm excited about what we are going to be able to bring to those law enforcement officers. So it's not just an academy setting anymore. We're coming to you.
Yeah, so our mandate is to train law enforcement officers. It doesn't say that we're limited to basic.
Sure.
And we know that 500-600 officers a year need the basic training, absolutely. But our officers need to be trained to the highest level throughout their entire career. And this catalog helps do that. And it takes some of the pressures off the local agencies, saves on their budget, saves time and resources. I'm really proud of the team for putting this together and making it happen. All right, so on to our third subject. Obviously, we're running out of time. We're passionate about what we do. But I want you guys to talk about these new awards, how we got here, what we're trying to do with it. Eric, why don't you start with the Servant's Leadership Award that we're doing at the Basic Academy and how we kind of came to that.
So we've taken in just a huge emphasis on teaching leadership at the Basic Academy, recognizing that these officers are leaders day one, right? What do we say? If someone relies on you, you are a leader.
Yeah, and they're getting 16 hours of certified leadership training at the academy now, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's always going to be a few officers, if not just one, that's going to stand up in that academy environment, and they're going to take the reins. Those leadership skills are going to start to show. They're going to start to shine, and we now recognize that that person with the Servant's Heart Leadership Award, and that's something that's voted on by the other academy cadets. And I chuckled when you said, "How did this come about?" Because I believe, I don't know the context, but I believe the three of us were sitting around, and my boss, director, you know him, he kind of said, we need to recognize these. We're going to do an award. Phone comes out, text message made, and by golly, we had an award. So that's how it came about.
Power in the text. The power of the text.
So I will say that's actually somewhat true, but this is how serious the director takes it. So we're teaching in Camden, if you remember this, in our B class.
Oh.
And we're teaching and we're talking about servant leadership and the importance of it, and we are very passionate about it. And he comes from the right side and goes, "This is how serious I take it. We're going to have a servant leadership award. Make it happen." And you and I were like, "All right, here we go, making things happen."
So we gave 2 of those out to the Northwest graduating class and the East Camden graduating class. Those were the first 2 awards we gave out. And honestly, I of all the things we do, it was one of the most special moments during that academy graduation to see the look on their faces that they were voted on by the rest of the class. Their service was recognized.
Yes, sir.
Their heart was recognized. Their leadership qualities were recognized. And honestly, both of them, very quiet, competent individuals, not loud, just really, truly humble law enforcement professionals. So that's the first one.
Yes.
Tell us where we went from there. I mean, we were on a roll.
Oh, man, we were on a roll. So I think the next one we probably came up with was going to be the Invictus Award. So a way to honor law enforcement officers across the states for their acts of valor, that service, that above and beyond aspect. So as we originally created, and matter of fact, I'm going to kind of show it for those who are watching today. This is the Invictus Award right here. And the coolest thing about it is that you actually get an amazing ribbon to go with you. And so it originally started out as a Medal of Valor. And through conversations over a cup of coffee around the whiteboard is everybody's got a Medal of Valor. So what do we call it? So we actually have an employee, Greg Harrison, in Northwest Academy. He one time shared with me a poem, and he's carried in his wallet probably for 3, close to 4 decades now. And it is the poem Invictus. And it describes in there that unconquered spirit, that ability to rise above everything else. And so as we were talking, we threw out the idea of calling it the Invictus Award, and that's where it has gone. And so this past week, I believe it was Monday night in September. Tuesday, thank you. My days are running together.
All the days run together for sure.
So we were able to go and present it to the first 2 recipients, and I want you to talk about that.
Yeah, so very shortly after we pushed this out to the chiefs and sheriffs, the first nomination actually came from our former agency in Hot Springs. And Officers Cato and Officers Lee were involved in a critical incident. I mean, routine traffic stop, the same thing we've all done 100 times.
Yeah.
And the gentleman in the car was determined that he wasn't going to go to jail that night, had a hidden firearm, stepped out of the car as he was getting out, shot Officer Cato several times, putting him on his back right outside of the car, shattered his hip, immobilized him. I mean, one of the worst things a cop can feel, is being on your back in a gunfight and nowhere to go and not able to go. And Officer Lee responded as a backup officer. They stayed in the fight. Officer Cato got his weapon out, was able to engage after being shot, put several rounds into the suspect. Officer Lee advanced, got a position of cover, put accurate rounds down range, and put the suspect down. And it's amazing enough that they fought through that moment in time, but then they did all the other things right. So Cato provided cover, did a tactical mag exchange on the ground, bleeding everywhere. Lee came over, put a tourniquet on, dragged him off the X, called for backup. And those are the things that we want to recognize with that award. And so the way that happens is, so you go to our website. We've got a link on there for the Invictus Award. It tells you how to nominate, how the process works. We have a committee that is made up of myself, Colonel Hager, Secretary Hager from the Department of Public Safety, Colonel for the State Police, the executive directors, Gary Sipe and Scott Bradley from the Sheriff's Association, the Chiefs Association. We review each of those nominations. And look, it's not just, we're not giving out awards to just give out awards. I mean, you're going to have to do something to truly earn this. And we've got numerous awards that we're presenting over the next few months across the state of Arkansas, recognizing those young men and women that, again, have done something that just 99.9% of our population is not willing to do. Good people standing in between us and evil.
That's a testament to what Arkansas law enforcement is about. That we have that many. Sitting in the chairs we're sitting in now, it's a proud moment to think about. There's so much negativity out there across the country in regards to law enforcement from what I would call the vocal few. But we have firsthand account, firsthand information, and we see what these heroes are doing day in and day out, and it's an honor to get to recognize them.
Yeah, and how fitting the first one again was from people that we helped hire, mold, and had played a part in their career when they first started. But very emotional night. It was in front of the city council, packed room. Very special moment for us as a division. Hopefully, it meant a lot to them, but we were very proud to do it.
Just for one second, not to interrupt you, but for folks that aren't familiar, both those officers are back on duty, doing their job, doing it all over again, right?
Yeah, they're still out there.
Yep.
Again, they're back in the fight, so to speak. Titanium hips and all, So he told me he sets off every metal detector he goes through, but he's still in the fight, and that's what we want.
You bet.
I mean, that's what we want. So, and then the third award, just kind of again a spitball. We're talking about how we're recognizing our officers for the great things they're doing, and then we wanted to be able to recognize people that are in your line of work, the training side of the house.
Sure.
May not be assigned to the division, but are pouring time and effort into officers across the state of Arkansas.
Yes, sir.
And doing it right.
Yes, sir.
So,
Heraclitus. So a way to honor and recognize those adjunct instructors. We can't do our jobs. We don't have enough staff to teach everything that we can. So those instructors from agencies, their agencies have been amazing, allowing them to come in and pour into our advanced class and our basic class for those who rise above. So Heraclitus was a philosopher who talked about the way you train warriors and the idea behind it. So I'm going to quickly read through actually his quote. Out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are nothing but targets. 9 are the real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one. One is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. So the translation itself has kind of been lost over the years. When Heraclitus talks about the 9, he uses a phrase, he says, they wear the armor. And that's great. But the one is the armor. And that is what we are trying to train for those individuals who received that Invictus Award, those instructors pouring in, looking for the one, training them at that level every single day.
Yeah, you think about it, the men and women that are receiving the Invictus Award had somebody
Yes.
that was pouring that level of training in them to get them through that moment in time, right? So that's we're getting ready to wrap up our podcast today, and great topics, very informational. I was worried about the decert side, but you pulled it off. I mean, what grace, and used some big words, some lawyer words.
Yes.
And we really
I paid a lot of money for those words, sir.
Well, I'm glad you do. So, hey, we're fixing to wrap up the 10-8 podcast. We're fixing to go off the air, but just remember this: we're always here for you. We're always in service, and that's what 10-8 means, right? In service. And we never go out of service. You can find the podcast on our website, the CLEST website, Department of Public Safety. Hit our tab. There'll be a tab there for the podcast, and we look forward to coming back next time. Next time is going to be a roundtable discussion with some of our Central Arkansas Metro chiefs, and just have some discussion with them about how they're making things work and doing the right things in their communities. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.